Hi guys, my name is Sarvan Kumar. I'm your economy faculty. Welcome to Rathod's IAS Economic Weekly series. Guys, in the previous class, the previous Economic Weekly, we have discussed many of the important economic current affairs that appeared in the different newspapers. And even today, we are going to discuss all these different current affairs appear in different newspapers such as the Indian Express, the Live Mint, and particularly the Hindu and Hindu Business Line. So guys, without wasting any time, let us begin the first topic of the day. See, in the previous Economic Weekly series, we have discussed about the monetary policy. We have discussed about the monetary policy of RBI. Right? In the previous class, we have discussed about the monetary policy of the RBI. And you also understood what is the objectives of this monetary policy of RBI also. See, what are the objectives of the monetary policy? Objectives of the monetary policy of RBI is achieving the growth in the economy as well as price stabilization. Achieving the growth as well as maintaining the stabilization of the prices are one of the two important objectives of the monetary policy of RBI. Now, we have also understood with an example understood how the monetary policy of the RBI is going to work. Now guys, so what you have understood from the previous Economic Weekly class, you have understood that previously during the COVID-19 pandemic, during this COVID-19 situation, you know that because of the series of the lockdowns, right, due to the series of lockdowns and due to many reasons, right, the economy have fallen. And in fact, it have achieved a negative growth rate. The economy have achieved negative growth rate. Now, in the previous class, we also discussed that now, if RBI ensures more and more money supply into the economy, then what happens in the previous class? I told you this example. Remember this example where this bank is going to give the 10 lakh rupees of cash, and with that we are going to generate certain GDP. And if this amount doubles, the GDP tentatively is going to get doubled. Now, with this example, you understood that if RBI increases the money supply in an economy, it leads to growth. So as a result of it, after the COVID-19 pandemic, just after the COVID-19 pandemic, in order to make the economy recover from the COVID-19 pandemic situation, the RBI decreased its key rate, repo rate. Now you know that repo rate is the rate at which RBI extends loans to the commercial banks, but for the short-term period, that too by mortgaging the government securities. Now, if RBI reduces the repo rate, then automatically what happens? Banks, as a policy, as a monetary policy transmission need to be happen, the banks are also going to reduce the key interest rates. The banks are going to reduce the interest rates. Now, if RBI reduces the repo rate, say for example, currently the repo rate is 4% and the banks are going to give the loans at 10%. Now altogether the percentage at which the banks are going to provide the loan and the formula they use is altogether different, but for your understanding, try to understand, if repo is 4% and the banks is giving the loans at 10%, now what happens if RBI reduces the repo rate to 3%, automatically banks need to reduce this bank rate, the interest rate that which they give the loans need to be reduced to 9%. Now in such a way, if somebody knows that if RBI have reduced the key interest rates, what is going to happen? The people is going to go to the banks and they are going to have the loans from the banks. Now ensuring the money supply in the economy, ensuring the credit in the economy, or ensuring the liquidity economy is one and the same. I told you this in the previous class. Now as a result of it, the money supply increased. The money supply is increased. Now, you also understood in the previous class that if money supply increases in such a way, it also leads to inflation. Now, it also leads to inflation. Now, here comes the main thing. Now, recently, the inflation in the economy is recorded at 6.1%. Now, here comes the main question. So, in the previous example, what we have understood in the previous classes examples, we have understood in order to achieve the growth in an economy, the government, the RBI should reduce the key rates, and they should ensure the money supply in the economy. Now, if they ensure the money supply in the economy, although growth increases, but it also leads to increase in the inflation. But inflation at any given point of time should not exceed 4 plus or minus 2. At any given point of time, it should not exceed 4 plus or minus 2. So, but currently, What's the meaning of 4 plus or minus 2? The lower threshold limit of the inflation is 2% and the upper threshold limit of the inflation is 6%. At any given point of time, the inflation should not decrease 2% and it should not increase 6%. This is the threshold limit. Now, as the inflation increases to 6.1%, now it need to be maintained at an optimal level, that is between 4 plus or minus 2. It is from 2 to 6%. Now, as a result of it, RBI recently increased the repo rate to 4.40%, from 4 to 4.40%. Now comes the question. In the previous class, we have clearly discussed what is this tools available with our monetary policy, with the monetary policy committee. Understand guys? Monetary policy done by the RBI. Monetary policy means achieving the growth and maintaining the stabilization of the prices. Now, in order to achieve the growth, we need to increase the supply. In order to increase the supply, RBI reduces the key interest rates. Now, if RBI, like repo rate, if a repo rate is decreased, RBI is going to increase the money supply in the economy. If money supply increases, on the other hand, what comes? Inflation comes. So, controlling the inflation as well as achieving the growth is the twin objectives, and it will be done by the RBI, that we have clearly understood in the previous class. Now, in this class, we are going to understand why that RBI and Government of India is more concerned about the inflation. Why? If RBI, what happens if more and more inflation happens in an economy? What are their effects? Isn't it or not? In the previous class, we have understood that currently the inflation is going to cross by 6.1%. Now let it get crossed, but in spite of it, we are going to achieve some growth, right? You understood that if money supply is enhanced in the economy, it is going to enhance the growth at a given point of time. And we also understood with this growth comes the inflation. Now, what happens? What are the negative effects of the inflation? Why it should be maintained between 4 plus or minus 2, so that we are a little bit getting compromised with the growth. Right? Now, the RBI has increased the repo rate to 4.40%. Now, with that, money supply will be decreased. And if the money supply is decreased, automatically the people is going to demand more. The people is going to demand less goods and services. As a result, inflation comes down. Now, in this class, we will better understand what is the main reason why inflation need to be controlled. And we are also going to discuss clearly about the effects of inflation on various persons and various people, right? Now, before that, I have already discussed in the previous class, but for those who are watching this economy weekly class newly, now let us try to understand, before we go into the topic, you need to understand what is the meaning of inflation and what is the meaning of a price index and what is how inflation is calculated and what is the meaning of WPI inflation, WPI and CPI. I'm going to discuss all these things in a brief for you, okay? Now, understand guys, imagine there is a pen. In 1992, the price of the pen might be 10 rupees. Now, in 2022, the price of the pen might get increased to 30 rupees. Might get increased to 30 rupees. Now, can you say that the inflation in the prices of the pen is 20 rupees? No, we cannot mention the increase in the prices of the pen as 20 rupees in a monetary value. We need to express it as a percentage change. We need to express the inflation as the percentage change in the price index of the current year when compared to the previous year for a particular good. Now, don't worry, I am going to give you the example so that you can understand the things very clearly. Now, understand, in order to calculate the inflation, first we should have a base year. Base year is an year where the prices of the goods and services are at a stable level. Now, understand, right? Now, take the example of the same pen and we are going to calculate the inflation for that pen for 3 years. Right? Now, currently, the base year is 2011 and 2012. Now, in the base year, the price of the pen is 10 rupees. Now, in the next year, in 2012 and 2013, the prices of the pen is increased to 20 rupees. Now, similarly, in 2013 and 2014, the prices of the pen increased to 30 rupees. Now, first we are going to calculate the price index. And by using the price index, we are going to calculate inflation. Now, see. Now, let us have a task. We are going to calculate the inflation of the pen in the year 2013-14 when compared to the year 2012 and 13. Now, for that, we need to construct the price index first. Now, how to construct a price index? Let's see. Now, see, the price index of the year 2012 and 2013. See, how we calculate the price index? The price index is simply calculated by calculating the prices of the current year divided by the prices of the base year into 100. How we calculate the inflation of a particular year? Try to understand. See, the prices of the current year, we are calculating the price index of 2012 and 13. The prices of the current year, the price of the pen here is 20 rupees in 2012 and 13. The price of the pen in the base year, 10 rupees multiplied by 100. 10 twos and 2 into 100, 200. This is the price index number of the pen for the year 2012 and 13. Similarly, we are going to calculate the price index. We are going to calculate the price index for the year 2013 and 14. Now, what is the prices? What is the current year prices here? In the current year prices, see, that is 30 rupees divided by the base year prices 10 into 100. Now, 3s, and we are going to get 300. Now, understand the price index number. See, the price index number for the year 2012 and 13 is 200, and the price index for the year 2013 and 14 is 300. Now, I told you inflation is nothing but percentage change in the price index of the current year when compared to the previous year. See, how do we calculate? How do we calculate inflation of the pen in the year 2013 and 14? See, the price index of the current year, that is 300, minus the price index of the previous year, 200, divided by the price index of the previous year, 200, multiplied by 100. So, automatically 100 by 200 into 100. So, what do we get here? See, and 100 by 2 we get 50%. So, we express, try to understand guys, the inflation of the pen in the year 2013 and 14 is 50%. Inflation is 50%. So, the prices of the pen increased by 50%. So, this is how you calculate the inflation, guys. This is how you calculate the inflation. Now, if you do, see, I hope you understood. First, we need to calculate the price index, and then we are going to calculate the inflation rate in such a way. Now, once we calculate the inflation, I hope you clearly understood how we calculate the inflation. Now, guys, understand, if we have calculated the inflation of a pen in the year 2013 and 14 as 50%. Now, here we calculated the inflation of a single pen. Isn't it or not? Now, if we do the same kind of a calculation for a basket of goods and services, if we take a basket of goods and services, take 7, for example, take 7 basket of goods and services. Now, if you calculate the inflation of these 7 basket of goods and services, if you take the average number, you are going to get we are going to get the inflation of this particular 7 basket of goods and services. Now, we call it as CPI inflation, consumer price index based inflation. Take a basket of goods and services, calculate the inflation, take an average number, you get the CPI inflation. Now, similarly, we have the WPI inflation. Understand guys, see, there are about 1200 to 1300 items that we usually see that to be sold and sold in the WP, this wholesale market. Now, if you do calculate all these processes, as we calculated the price index of the pen and we also calculated the inflation for the pen, if you do the same thing for all the wholesale products that were sold in the wholesale market of India, we will get the WPI inflation. Now, this is the basics. These are kind of a basics which you need to remember, right, in order to understand the whole concepts, these economic concepts. See, recently RBI raised the repo rate by 40 basis points and the cash reserve ratio by 50 basis points in order to reduce the inflation rate. Now, I hope you clearly understood what's the meaning of inflation, and you also understood the meaning of price index, and you understood how the inflation is calculated and what is the CPI and WPI inflation. Now, let us try to understand what are the effects of inflation on the economy. Now, inflation has a multi-dimensional effects of the economy. Now, let us look at one by one. Now, when we look at the inflation effects on the debtor and creditor, now understand guys, these kind of statements are very much important for your prelims. As we promised in the Rathods IAS that we are not only going to cover the current affairs, but we are also going to provide you with the basics that is very much required to clear this kind of a prelims exams. Now, inflation redistributes income from the creditors to the debtors. So, lenders suffer and borrowers benefit out of the inflation. So, you need to remember that lenders is going to suffer and borrowers is going to get benefit out of the inflation. Now, let us take an example guys. Say for example, imagine he is a mango vendor. He is a mango vendor, and now he took a loan of 100 rupees from the bank, and in the next day he need to pay 10% interest rate on it. So cumulatively he need to pay 110 rupees for the bank on the next day. Now with this 100 rupees, he in the same day, today, he purchased 2 kgs of mangoes. He purchased 2 kgs of mangoes. So 1 kg of the mangoes is 50 rupees. He purchased 2 kgs of the mangoes. Now in the next day, he wants to sell it at 60 rupees per kg, and then he need to earn 120 rupees. Out of this 120 rupees he earned, he wants to pay 110 rupees for the bank, and he wants to retain 10 rupees as a profit. Isn't it or not? Now, due to inflation, the prices of the mangoes have increased to 80 rupees on the next day. Now, he sold that 2 kgs of the mangoes 8 into 2 at 160 rupees. Now, he is going to pay 110 rupees for the bank, and now his profit, look at his profit. It is 50 rupees. Now, that's the meaning. See, here the borrower is benefited, but the lender who given the money of 100 rupees is suffered. Now, here in this PPT, you have another example. Just you can go through the similar kind of an example with a full and clear explanation for the onions. Right? In case of I used another example here onions, and in our class we have used an example of mangoes. Now, when we look at the effects of inflation on the producer and consumer, see, during inflation, the producer gains and consumer stands at loss. It's a clear example, you can understand it very clearly. Now, if a production unit produces 2 ACs and they are sold at 80,000 rupees, what's the meaning of it? Each AC is sold at 40,000 rupees. Now, consumer has to pay 80,000 automatically their price. After the inflation, the same AC cost 50,000 each. You know, the inflation means increase in the prices of goods and services. Now, the consumer has to pay 1 lakh rupees for the 2 ACs. So, now the producer is benefited, automatically the consumer stands at loss. Now, on the flexible income group and fixed income group. Now, the flexible income group such as sellers, self-employed, employees of the private concerns, all these are going to get benefited because their salaries are indexed to the inflation. What's the meaning of it? Say, for example, if a person is getting a salary of 100 rupees. Now, with this salary, he is purchasing 10 goods. Now, all of a sudden, the prices of these goods and services has increased to 110 rupees. Isn't it or not? Now, what's the meaning of inflation? Increase in the prices of goods and services. Earlier, the prices is 10 goods price is 100. Now, it increases to 110. Now, extra 10 rupees will be provided to that particular person as DA, as dearness allowance, in such a way in order to make him to cope up with the inflation. Now, with this example, you can understand that this flexible income group is going to get have benefit, because their salaries are going to get adjusted with the inflation. But the fixed income group, their wages are not going to get adjusted with the inflation. Still they are going to get the same old 100 rupees, even though the 10 commodities increases, the 10 commodities prices increases to 110 rupees. So daily wage earners is going to be lose during the situations of inflation. Now, on the bond holders and equity holders, you know the meaning of a bond. Bond, if somebody subscribes a bond, he gives the money to the he gives the money to the company, and then the bondholder is going to get a periodic interest payment. Irrespective of the profits or losses of a company, the bondholder is going to get some money, right? Now, on the other hand, equity share means equity holder means is going to have some equity share in the ownership of the company, and he needs to bear both the loss as well as he also going to get the profits, right? The debentures or bondholders lost due to inflation because the interest rates are fixed for the bond. To avoid this, the interest rate is fixed on the basis of inflation, which means interest vary according to the inflation. Such type of bonds are called inflation indexed bonds. So simple. See, when we look at the effects of the inflation on production and consumption, during inflation, the demand for goods and services may fall. Why? Because, say, understand guys, what happens usually during the inflation? We need, see, for example, this is a packaged item. Now, this packaged item is currently sold at 10 rupees. Now, due to inflation, now it is need to be sold at 15 rupees. But in order to make the consumers to attract to the same prices, what happens? Instead of this producer is either going to reduce the level of the packaging, or it is going to reduce the content and going to make the prices at a same level. So, during inflation, demand for goods and services may fall temporarily, hence the less production and less consumption, right? Now, on the investment, right? Investment in the economy is boosted by the inflation because of the two reasons. Higher inflation indicates higher demand and suggests entrepreneurs to expand their production level. You know what's the meaning of it? Now, imagine this company is producing 10 goods now. Now, what's the meaning of inflation? When inflation comes, if people have more and more money with them, they are going to demand more and more goods and services. If somebody is demanding more goods and services, definitely who are going to produce it? Producers are going to produce it. So, as a result of it, the higher inflation indicates demand and suggests the entrepreneur to expand their production level in order to cope up with the raised demand. I hope you understood it. Now, when we look at the effects of inflation on the expenditure, inflation affects both forms of expenditure, consumption as well as investment. See, understand, we see a tendency among the people to cut their consumption levels aimed at neutralizing the impacts of the prices, making consumption expenditure fall. Now, what's the meaning of it? What's the meaning of consumption expenditure? It simply means the expenditure incurred by the people in order to consume the goods and services is called consumption expenditure. Isn't it or not? Now, when the prices increases, people usually think that why we need to purchase these kind of commodities when they are priced at a higher level. So we need to avoid it. Now, if people starts avoiding to purchase those goods and services, automatically consumption expenditure is going to get fall. Now, the exact opposite happens once the prices heads downward. And I hope you understood it. On the other hand, inflation makes investment expenditure increase as a result of the decreased cost of money. Next, when we look at the effects of inflation on the taxes, see, on the tax structure of the economy, inflation creates two dimensions. See, understand, see guys, currently if you are paying, say for example, this is a product, and the product price is 100 rupees and the tax currently you paying on it is 10%. So you are going to pay 10 rupees as a tax. Now, due to inflation, the prices of this particular commodity became 150. And then now you are going to pay 10% tax on it. Now, what is the 10% of it? 15 rupees. Now, earlier you used to pay 10 rupees of the tax. Now, you are paying 15 rupees of the tax. So, the taxpayer suffers while paying their direct as well as indirect taxes. We call it as indirect tax. See, as indirect taxes are imposed on the value addition, increased prices of the goods makes taxpayers to pay more and more taxes in such a way. Right? Now, similarly, understand guys, similarly, in case of direct taxes, see, understand, say for example, if a person is getting 100 rupees. Now currently this person does not comes under the ambit of direct taxes. Say for example, income tax. This person does not come under the ambit of income tax. Now all of a sudden there is an inflation. Now with the inflation, this person's salary is need to get increased. Say for example, its salary is increased to 200. Now what happens during such situation? The persons who are earning an income of 200 need to come under the ambit of direct tax. Now in such a way, here originally the amount that he gets is not getting increased because this 200 is very much required to purchase the same old goods, but he is now coming under the ambit of the taxes, direct tax ambit. Now in such a way, the people who are paying the direct taxes is also going to get affected. This problem is known as the bracket creep, that is inflation induced tax increases. Right? I hope you understood it. Next. Now we are going to understand the effects of inflation on the exchange rate. See, with every inflation, the currency of the economy depreciates. Right? You know the meaning of depreciation? Decrease in the exchange rate of the currencies, of the home currency with the foreign currency. Provides it follows the flexible currency regime. Though it is a competitive matter, there might be high inflationary pressure on the foreign currency assets which the exchange rate is compared. Right? During such, the exchange rate is going to get depreciated during the inflation. Now, when we look at the exports, while inflation, these statements are very important, guys. Exportable items of an economy gains competitive prices in the world market. Due to this, the volume of the exports, thus the volume of the export increases and thus export income increases in the economy. I think you can clearly understand it. Now, on imports, inflation gives an economy the advantages of lower imports and import substitution as foreign goods becomes costlier. Next, when we look at on the trade balance, effects of the inflation on the trade balance, in case of developed economy, inflation makes trade balance favorable, while for the developing economies, inflation is unfavorable for their balance of trade. We have discussed about it very clearly in our WTO as well as external sector. Right? Next, on the employment, inflation increases employment in a short run. Why? Because see, currently this factory is producing 10 goods. Now all of a sudden, due to the more money supply with the people started demanding 20 goods. Now who are going to produce this 20 goods? Definitely by the factories. Now if the factory want to produce 20 goods earlier from the 10 goods, now they need to increase their employment in order to work in this factory. Now inflation increases employment in the short run but becomes neutral or even negative in the long run. Now on the wages, inflation increases the nominal value of the wages while their real value falls. See, that what's the meaning of it? The nominal value, say for example, if a person is earning an amount of 100 rupees, but he is purchasing 10 goods. Now this, due to the inflation, the prices of these 10 goods increase to, right, say for example 150 rupees. Getting my point? 150 rupees. Now this person's salary need to be increased by 15. Now understand, inflation increases the nominal value of the wages, that is his salary is increased to 150 while the real value falls, because still 150 rupees is required to purchase the same old goods and services, right? Now on the self-employed, inflation has a neutralizing impact on the self-employed people in the long run, but in the short run they are also going to get affected as the economy as a whole going to get affected, right? Now when we look at the other effects of the inflation, see, higher prices reduces the amount of exports and increases the cheaper imports from the other countries, isn't it or not? If the domestic price of the any particular good increases, automatically cheaper goods get imported. It results in unfavorable balance of payments, right? Automatically it is going to result in unfavorable balance of payments. What is the balance of payments? See, we have the current account balance as well as capital account balance, right? We have the two balances. All those one-way transactions recorded in current account, all those two-way transactions are recorded in capital account, right? Now as a result, we might have unfavorable balance of payments. Say for example, now we might be exporting due to inflation, our domestic goods and services prices might increase. Now as a result of it, the foreigners might tend to reluctant to import our country's goods as their prices is increased. Now in reverse, we are going to import the cheap goods. Now as a result, say for example, if we are exporting just 100 rupees of the goods and we are importing 200, we have negative 100. Now we call this as unfavorable balance of payments. Here the rate of inflation leads at a times, these are like auxiliary, leads to strikes, hartals and dharnas, hike in the prices of the petrol and diesel always leads to strike in many of the states. So these are major effects of inflation in an economy. So in order to avoid these kind of effects of inflation on the economy, they need to be maintained. The inflation is need to be maintained is well below or well within this threshold limit of 4 plus or minus 2. So that's the reason RBI resorts to increase the repo rate, decreases the money supply and reduces the inflation, so that all these kind of different effects of the inflation on the economy is reduced or negated. I hope you clearly understood it, and just try to pause the video in between and then try to have a note of all these things, guys, right? These are very much important for your prelims. And next we are going to discuss about the poverty in India. See, before we discuss about it, what is the meaning of a poverty? Understand, what is the meaning of poverty? Understand, a human being needs some basic goods and services in his life for his survival. Now say for example, he needs food, he needs cloth, he needs shelter and he needs education, right? Isn't it or not? These are like basic goods and services which are required for the survival of a human being. Now we say those persons who can have all these 4 basic goods and services, who can afford all these 4 basic goods and services in their life, are said to be living above the poverty. And those who can't afford all these basic goods and services in their life is said to be living in poverty. Now say for example, take the prices of these 4 commodities. Say for example, each one's price is 25. Each one's price is 25. Now, if those persons who can make an expenditure of 100 rupees automatically is going to afford all these basic goods and services in their life, so automatically they are living above the poverty line, above poverty. And say for example, somebody is making just consumption expenditure of 75 rupees. So automatically it means this guy cannot afford these 4 goods and they might afford only 3 goods. So automatically they are living below the poverty. I hope you understood it. Now in this way only the international poverty line of 1.90 US dollars is decided per day, right? Now understand why we are using the term called expenditure instead of income. Say for example, guys, take the example of this family. This is wife, this is husband and this is wife, and they have siblings. right, in such a way. Now understand, see, those persons who can make an expenditure of 100 is going to afford automatically these 4 goods, and if they can afford automatically these 4 goods, they are said to be living above the poverty. Now say for example, all these wife and 3 siblings is not at all earning the money, and but this person is earning an income of 500 rupees. Now can you tell me, these persons who are not earning the income, are not getting all these basic goods and services in their life? They are getting. Why? This father's salary of 500 is divided among all these 5 people, and these 5 people is going to get all these basic goods and services in their life. But without earning anything, they are getting all the basic goods and services in their life, which makes them living above the poverty. So that's the reason why instead of income, we use the term called consumption expenditure or expenditure method of calculating the poverty in India. I hope you understood it. So when we look at the current affair, the recent World Bank report has shown extreme poverty in India, right, more than halved between 2011 and 19, from 22.5% to 10.2%. This reduction was higher in rural areas, from 26.3% to 11.6%. Now, in order to reduce the poverty in India, the government of India came up with a lot of initiatives. See, the government of India came up with different schemes to eradicate the poverty in India. These schemes include Ujjwala Yojana, PM Awas Yojana, Swachh Bharat Mission, Jan Dhan, right, Mission Indradhanush, all these. Like say we have the National Food Security Act of 2013, right. With this, the people who are eligible is going to get a rice at a very subsidized prices, right, at 20 kgs per family, 5 kgs per person particularly. So in such a way, the persons is receiving the subsidized food grains under the National Food Security Act of 2013, which mainly it is going to use the PDS system, right? So this is about this National Food Security Act of 2013. And we see, when we look at the rest of the reasons, identification of deprived households on the basis of socio-economic caste census across the welfare programs helped creating a consistency in the well-being of the poor irrespective of the caste and religion. Now we are discussing about different reasons for the eradication of the poverty in India. The coverage of women under the Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana and self-help groups increased from 2.5 crore in 2014 to 8 crore in 2018 as a result of more than 75 lakh self-help group working closely over 30 lakhs elected Panchayati Raj representatives, and 40% of the women are women. So these are the initiatives, guys. These are very much important for your mains, but try to have a note of them. These are like points which are appeared in the Indian Express. This article usually appeared in the Indian Express, and we have taken all these points from there. The Finance Commission transfers were made directly to the Grama Panchayats, leading to the creation of basic infrastructure like Pakka villages, Pakka roads, Pakka village roads and drains at a much faster pace in the rural areas. The social capital of the self-help groups ensured the availability of credit through banks, microfinance institutions and mudra loans. You know about, we have discussed about all these things in the statics, right? In the 2 phases, Gram Swaraj Abhiyan in 2018, LED bulbs provision and bank accounts, Jodranjan Yojana, immunization of the people. In such a way, the government came up with a lot of initiatives like Manregas, right? The thrust on the people's campaign like Sabki Yojana, Sabki Vikas, Sabke Saath, Sabke Vikas, all these kind of initiatives helped in reducing the poverty in India. So these are some of the important reasons for the reduction of the poverty, particularly in rural India. Now, when we look at the statics, see, the things that I have explained you here is very much important for your prelims, and these reasons why the poverty has reduced in India is some of the important topics and some of the important points that you be very careful to be understanding for your mains. Now this is about that poverty in India, and then we are going to discuss one more topic, that is PAN Aadhaar made mandatory for high value cash deposits and withdrawals. The government has made requirement of the permanent account number or Aadhaar number for depositing or withdrawing rupees 20 lakhs or more in the financial year for opening up a current account mandatory. See guys, all those initiatives or developments with respect to the monetary policy or with respect to the money market, are very much important for your UPSC exams. See, money market is going to have a lot of weightage in your UPSC prelims as well as in your UPSC mains. So be very careful with respect to these kind of topics like money market. Now, what's the current scenario? The Central Board of Direct Taxes in a notification said furnishing the PAN or biometric Aadhaar is mandatory for such high value cash deposits or withdrawals from the banks. The same will be applied for opening up of a current account or a cash credit account with the banks or post office. Banks, a post office and cooperative societies would be required to report the transactions of the deposits and withdrawals aggregating to 20 lakhs or more in a financial year. As of now, when we look at the current scenario, as of now, the PAN is required, the PAN, permanent account number, is required to be furnished for cash deposits for rupees more than 50,000. While with these rules, the threshold of 20 lakhs has been defined for the full financial year. So when we look at the interoperability of the PAN and Aadhaar, the PAN Aadhaar interoperability will help the banks to record the details of those who don't have a PAN. The interchangeable provision in the rules would allow the banks or financial institutions to ask for Aadhaar in case individual states that he and she does not have a PAN. Simple, you can understand these statements very easily. The Finance Act of 2019 has provided for the interchangeability of the PAN with the Aadhaar. Those who has not been allotted with the PAN but possesses an Aadhaar number may furnish or intimate or quote his Aadhaar in lieu of the PAN. So in such a way, the PAN Aadhaar interoperability you can alternatively use anything. So this is about the new development with respect to the PAN Aadhaar or Aadhaar mandatory for the high value cash deposits and withdrawals with the money market, particularly with the banking sector. So these are some of the important current affairs which appeared in the recent newspapers. Guys, the major issue with respect to the Indian economy happening currently in all the newspapers these days is with respect to RBI increasing the repo rate and decreasing the money supply so as to control the inflation. We have discussed this is the main topic which appeared in different kinds of newspapers all around the week. So we have discussed about both the monetary policy in the previous economic weekly class, and we also discussed why the inflation need to be maintained, so that the effects of the inflation can be negated. What are the effects of the inflation? We have discussed very clearly in this class. So we have discussed the current affair, with particularly the most crucial current affair which is happening, which is running all around the world, around the country, particularly in the news channels debates, very clearly in our classes, right? And those who haven't watched the previous economic weekly class, just watch that economic weekly class and try to connect that previous class with this class so that you can understand the concept in a comprehensive way, right guys? So I hope you enjoyed this class and you also understood this class. So in the next week also we are going to come up with a lot of current affairs, and we are going to cover it comprehensively, where you are going to get both the statics as well as the current affairs in a single video, right? Thank you and stay tuned to Rathods IAS.